Now let's talk about the legend of Kind Bill. You have a pretty interesting story, dude. So I've known you. I got to know you 7 years ago when I got my first job in legal weed. And I just saw this guy go into our back corner of the lab, and he was just super particular about every single thing that came out of that lab. As I got to know him, I realized that it is the legend of Kind Bill. Before we get into that and how you mastered your craft, how about you just break it down on how did you even get started? What started you on this journey? It was clearly before legalization.
Sure. You know, all the way back to the first time that I consumed cannabis, that there was an effect. Pretty much been a central point in my life. Really, not that I'm an advocate for super young use, but single mom, going through all the stuff. And I was out there smoking weed when I was 13 and fell in love with it. And then I tried to grow some weed a couple times when I was 15, and I'm a go after something that I want to figure out kind of guy. One thing led to another, and I kind of fell in the hands of some guys that were smugglers and fairly decent scale growers in South Florida. And I lied about how old I was and kind of ran away to join the circus, so I say, and that's kind of where it started, really at a crazy scale for a kid. Something unique about youth, right, is you could really be 10 feet underwater and think that you have water around your ankles. But yeah, so that was kind of the beginning of it. I guess to back up, both my parents are academics at a pretty decent level, and perfectionists in their own crafts. And I'm fortunate enough to be in a discussion about what the good is from an early age. Then that first group that I was with, my mentor was, obsessive compulsively perfectionist on the level of insane. And that may be necessary to not be robbed, arrested, go to jail as a smuggler, and through the 70s, 80s, 90s, as was his case. So
this is in Florida?
Southwest Florida.
What year is this?
I met those guys in 1987. I met there were two brothers, and I met the younger brother, and that's an entire story of itself. But nevertheless, he hadn't really met a young guy with the kind of go-to that I had, and I was pretty excitable and enthusiastic, as I'm known for, but maybe on 100x, right? And me and him started kicking around, and about 9 months into knowing him, he took me to a hotel where he brought his brother. I had a 2-hour conversation with him. He'd been growing at scale in both Jamaica, Canada, and Florida outdoor for over a decade, but had never grown indoor, nor had I, mind you, but I'd read some books. And I had a good conversation with them, and they're like, "We want you to come and build out this indoor grow for us," and put a blindfold on me and put me in the back of the car.
So you're 16. Had you grown weed at all?
Little bits, in the outside the window still of my mom's, and on the side of a pond, but I never pulled anything off. I never got any weed out of it. But I'd read everything that was in print a few times at that point, including all of the catalogs and everything for all the equipment. So I was really well versed with the language of the industry, and then the biology side of everything that was available written. And
Okay.
the dude was blown away. He, you know, I was 16. He completely believed that I was 19, or maybe didn't care. But I went out there, and yeah, that's where it started. I didn't leave the property for 6 months.
Damn.
And I didn't know where that place was until I went out of there in the back of a police car.
Really? I thought you had been doing it for a little bit longer before.
Years and years, but I always went in and out on a blindfold. That's how tight it was. People don't understand. It's like,
Oh, wow.
in California, you could maybe tell people that you were growing weed at this time. But man, you get life in prison in Florida for 30 plants.
Yeah, it's no
You
joke.
got thousands at times, so April 12th, 1991, I had just gotten done having my lunch. I was having a smoke on the deck and heard a helicopter, and knew the second that I heard it that everything that I knew before was going to have a new reference point. And going forward, there was going to be an intersection in time where I referenced everything, and that I was about to relearn everything. I just knew how low that helicopter was. That bad things were about to happen.
So you were like 26, 25?
No, I was 21, not even 20. Yeah.
Okay, so you've been doing it for like 3 or 4 years.
3.5 years out there about. Probably the last year and a half before got busted. A lot we were making some oil in Jamaica and smuggling it, and that was kind of this group's gig previous, but there had been some trouble down there, and they had been kind of just their version of lying low was growing 1,000 pounds of weed a year or something in the swamps.
So they went from smuggling to growing.
Yeah.
That's
And
really,
and then started tiptoeing back into the smuggling.
okay.
Yeah. And then
Okay, so what happened after you saw that helicopter? Like,
so a lot, man. I had plants both indoors and outdoors, and I immediately went into like damage control. I knew they were coming, but I tried to close the doors on all the outside buildings and knock down plants that they maybe wouldn't have seen yet. And I had thousands of seedlings that were up, that I kicked all those trays and ditched them, and phone records, whatever. But it turned into about a 9.5 hour kind of standoff of helicopter on me and SWAT team around the property.
Holy shit.
They didn't have a search warrant, so I wouldn't let them in. And they were threatening to kill my dogs, and very normal South Florida police handling, long-haired kid looking like a hippie out there. And eventually they're like, we're killing the dogs if you don't let us in. So I told them that I would climb over the fence and surrender if they didn't shoot my dogs. So probably 9-10 hours into the thing, I climbed over the fence and then was taken away to the sheriff's department while they try to get a warrant and figure out what they're going to do out there.
Shit. Okay. This is a lot, actually.
It's a lot.
We've talked about this before this show, and I'm still getting more out of it. This is crazy. So helicopters come, you're in a standoff for a while, right? And then all the processing and shit happens. So what ended up being the result or the penalty or the situation that came from that?
So long, drawn out thing. At the end of it, I ended up serving about 4.5 years in, and another that on parole, a controlled release. That was pretty stringent, man. I had 4,000 hours of community service originally. I had to be in therapy. I had to be in school. I had to be report like 6-year analysis a month. They were on me. They did not want me to get off parole for sure.
Yeah.
And about 2/3 of the way through that, my parole officer actually pulled me in, and he and I were definitely in conflict. And he was like, "Hey, you have family in Colorado. You should probably move there if you'd like to get off parole." And they kind of invited me to leave Florida, and
So
I
like, fuck
complied.
yeah.
I complied for sure, man. I got enrolled in school here in Colorado and came home.
So when was this? What
So
time?
that was 97. I did my last year of parole here. I
Okay.
got off October of 98.
All right. So you put in the time, man, both pushing serious weight way before this whole legalization craze. You
Yep.
had to served time for 4+ years, then parole. And parole alone, the way you explained it, sounded like it was really strict in Florida, at least. I don't know, it was like in Colorado.
Yeah, it was not a thing here in Colorado, but in Florida, my particular parole officer did not prefer me, and was looking to catch me, and I could be a little smart ass, a little bit, especially when I know I'm doing it right. You know what I mean? And a little flaunting, and but little things that I knew, because I was a little, it breaks you when they lock you up when you're that young a little bit, and so you're bucking in every way that you can on the line, kind of. And so I knew that I could smoke weed on the way to a drug test, and it would never be in my pee. But then I had to start flushing right away in case they're going to test me again. But I'll frequently go in there to do my drug test smelling like weed and just smiling at him, and he would just be, I'm sure, wanting to, kill me.
Damn, dude. You were playing with fire. You made it
Yeah,
out.
not the way to be. Not the way to be, but that's kind of what happens when you're under somebody's thumb, is that you tend to want to poke them in the eye if you get a chance.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to get the chip off my shoulder and just want to reintegrate and like be a normal guy that wasn't mad all the time. That's a rebuild process, right? And I was fortunate enough while doing time to like to read, and that to be my escape mechanism. A lot of people work out, play cards, whatever, but man, I just devoured everything I could read. And I have just shy of 1,000 books throughout the whole ordeal.
Wow.
Maybe like 300 novels and a lot of trash, but just whatever was around, I read it all. And then doing federal time, being articulate, there's a lot of smart guys in there. So I learned the commodities futures business, and came out wanting to do that, and just they wouldn't let me. But I got a financial education and made it count. And that's what I tell, if I talk to anybody that's going in or is in, that you're going to be mad and it sucks, but however you have to survive in there, make it count. Somehow learn something, even if it's about yourself, right? Some book that I read along the way is super pertinent, I think, to today. And I don't remember the book. I just remember this line from it, but it said, "No man has any measure of his freedom unless he can see the bars of his own cage." And the implication is that we're trapped by our ideas long before you could ever put chains on somebody. And so I was as free as I've ever been in prison, ever, because I was able to just double down on reading and not let them turn me into killer, savage, whatever thing that that machine is built to turn people into.
That's a crazy bar right there. Can you say that again?
So no man has any measure of his freedom unless he can see the bars of his own cage. And it was in a weird sci-fi novel I can't remember the name of that I pulled this out of, but I was like, wow, that's super profound, right? Because everybody's trapped up by their own ideas of normal and good and bad and whatever, right?
Yeah.
And the deal is to like dig down on what your bars are and try to suck a little less, a little sooner, like I always say.
I'm about to have some serious reflection on my life later tonight off of that one. I'm gonna switch it up. Let's take
Okay.
that. This is your journey, right?